A tough loss in Tempe for the BYU football program. What did we learn about the Cougars? Well, they can hang tough for a half, but that's not enough.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Appreciate all of you for being everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. This is the postcast edition as BYU falls to Arizona State 28-23 on Saturday evening. And at the outset of this conversation, let's understand that's a tough loss for BYU to absorb. This was a game that BYU will rue essentially a no-show in the first half. And I don't mean to come out and just lay it out that bluntly, but let's be honest. BYU falls behind 21-0, musters a field goal going into halftime, and had they mustered anything else, it felt like in that first half, offensively, defensively, or even special teams, because all three phases were just a complete flat-out failure in the first half, it felt like, they may have won this football game. That's the tough part to stomach if you're a Cougar fan, I think, in the aftermath of this one, is BYU found themselves in a hole they couldn't quite dig themselves out of. In the end, Chase Roberts comes up 2 yards short as a throw off the back foot by Jake Retzlaff goes. It was on the 49, if I recall correctly. So it got down to the 2-yard line. So he threw it 48 yards, but needed to get it 51 yards. It's a tough scene for the Cougars right now. Now, the flip side of all that is if you're going to lose like BYU lost, you might as well have the other people around you also lose. Colorado also lost today, so BYU still controls some portion of them still getting to the Big 12 title game next week. If BYU can beat Houston next week and a combination of either Kansas State beating Iowa State or Arizona State getting upset by Arizona, that will punch the ticket for BYU to go to Arlington. So all hope is not lost, Cougar fans, but you have lost some of the control here. Kickoff next week for BYU, we found out shortly after this game went final, will be at 8:15, another late night affair for BYU fans. And at that point, you should know whether it's going to be a lame duck game or if there's everything to play for BYU, as Arizona State will kick off at 1:30 in the afternoon. And then at 5:30, you'll have Farmageddon, which is a great rivalry name, as Iowa State and Kansas State do battle in Ames, Iowa. So the latter stages of that game, that second game I mentioned between KSU and ISU, should have a better idea once BYU kicks off if it really matters for BYU in the long run. Obviously, they could be playing just for pride's sake at that point, but at the same time, should Arizona or Kansas State, or Iowa State falter, BYU knows if they win, they're in. That is the nice part about this, is everything wasn't yanked away from BYU by virtue of Colorado laying an egg against Kansas. It's insane to consider right now that I would say if you were giving me power rankings, and the way I go about power rankings is week to week, the best team I think on the field. That's how I break down power rankings. I would say Kansas right now, for my money, is the best team in the Big 12. Crazy thing is, they're 5-6. They could lose next week and still not go bowling. That's the crazy scenario, but I still would tell you right now, if you were to ask me coming out of week 13 out of 14 in the college football season, best team in the Big 12 for my money right now, it's the Kansas Jayhawks. They are absolutely dominating, and had they done anything earlier on in the season, maybe much like BYU, a first half that was lousy, a second half that's absolutely stupendous, but it's not enough right now. So BYU still controls a portion of their fate. Once again, they have to beat Houston if they want to have any hopes of going to Arlington. And I can assure you that if you thought BYU was pretty surly after losing to Kansas, 2 straight losses will have them doubly surly. Now, pretty incredible second half, quite honestly, for BYU. And the crazy part about it is, BYU, had they been able to muster, it felt like really anything in the first half, that second half performance was enough to lift BYU to a win. But you can't play just a half of football. It's just the simple fact of life is you cannot play a half of football and expect it to be enough. BYU has put together some pretty marvelous comeback wins this season. We all saw that amidst that 9-0 start for the Cougars. But as it stands right now, the Cougars have lost 2 straight, and they're now 9-2. And I would guess when those rankings come out from the College Football Playoff Committee on Tuesday, Is BYU top 20th? Maybe not. I would say probably they're right, maybe at that 20 or 21 spot. And that's a tough thing to stomach for the Cougars when they were as high as 6 just a couple of weeks ago. A lot of people out there will be crying that BYU is fraudulent. They'll be saying that BYU got by with luck and whatever other excuse they want to use. But the tough part is that BYU has dropped 2 straight. And now a portion of their fate is out of their control. You controlled all this and had that Hail Mary come up 3 yards deeper and you get in the end zone. What a miracle comeback win it would have been for the Cougars as they win that one. We've been talking about that as a comeback for the ages, but it comes up oh so short. I got really interesting feelings that were compared to, remember Coastal Carolina? It wasn't a Hail Mary, but remember Dax Milne came up 1.5 yards short down there in Coastal Carolina when BYU was looking to get the win. I'm telling you, I got similar vibes when I saw that ball come down. And by the way, Chase Roberts caught that football. They ruled it incomplete. They need to go back and change the yardage and give him that reception back because it surely appears that he caught that ball and was down by contact before the ball came loose or whatever. So that's beside the point. It's a tough L for BYU. There's just zero that I can say. You don't want to lose in that fashion. And yes, fans on the field, crazy scenes as they put 1 second back on the scoreboard. We've got Kenny Dillingham F-bombing the referees and somehow getting away with it. That's okay. I will also insert here. How is there no penalty at all for that? Delay of game, unsportsmanlike conduct from some language from a coach. There was some talk about it being an intentional grounding. I can see that, but at the same time, there was a receiver technically in that general area, even though it probably ended up in row 33 of the stands. I don't get the fact that there was no repercussions for any of that on ASU's part. And that may sound like sour grapes coming from me being a BYU podcaster, but there needed to be something there. But I got to hand credit to ASU. They handled their business. They got the W, and they played the better game overall. Yes, in the second half, they faltered a little bit of their own, but they did enough when they needed to win this game. And it's the long and short of it. It's a really, really tough L to swallow if you're the Cougars. And now you got to pick it up and get back home and get ready for Houston late Saturday night. And I'm not going to lie, for my personal thing, I ain't happy about it. Many of you know that I have plans to go on vacation the first week of December, and anything other than 8:15 kick would have allowed me to, actually cover the game. And as it stands, that's not going to happen. I'll be able to watch approximately the first half before I'm in the air flying to Florida, and I will do something. I don't know. It's a fun time. Let's just put it that way. And I'm not trying to bemoan the fact that it's about me. It's not about me, but it's going to be interesting to have coverage for you guys while at the same time, getting some time with the family all the same. But tough loss for BYU. Now, what positives can we take away from this game for BYU? I think there are a few. There are a few things that stood out to me. A few guys I would like to shout out as well. Amidst the loss for BYU may not make them feel any better, but we'll get to those as you roll on momentarily right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Have fun this NFL season and do it with our friends over at FanDuel. You got an incredible offer for you guys out there. And even if it's not the NFL that you're into, FanDuel is truly America's #1 sports. We got a super simple, easy to use app. You can navigate the page, see all the stats, live play-by-play, all while placing your bets wherever you have a feeling you need to do that. And you get started once again with $150 in bonus bets, courtesy of our friends at FanDuel. If your first $5 bet wins as a first-time customer, think about that. First $5 bet, it hits $150 in your account to play around with, just like that. It's an incredible offer. So get started today and go to FanDuel.com. Make every moment count with our friends over at FanDuel, as they are a partner, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right. So positives coming out of this game for BYU. Number one, Jake Retzlaff. And I know that you're going to say, well, he threw that interception all but still the loss for BYU. Yes, I get that. And he also missed a whole shot that probably could have won the game to JoJo Phillips. Those are really, really tough throws to stomach the fact that he didn't make those throws, because you have to make those if you want to be a big-time quarterback. But I'm coming to the conclusion that Jake Retzlaff is a good quarterback. BYU fans are used to great quarterbacks. And I hope you can figure out the distinction, what I'm trying to say here. I think Jake Retzlaff is good, and he's going to help BYU win a number of football games. Is he going to be a great BYU quarterback? That, I think the jury's out on that, but I would lean towards no at this point. The inconsistency in his game, I think, is that he has moments where he absolutely feels like he needs to fire a fastball and doesn't need to. And then other moments where he completely underthrows a ball and it comes up short. For example, the Hail Mary, he's trying to throw it off his back foot after he has to escape the pocket. Now, the offensive line didn't do him any favors by allowing a 3-man rush to flush him from the pocket. But you'd like to see him step forward into that throw and gun it down the field. The fact that he's kind of throwing off his back foot, the fact that he heaved it 40-plus yards in the air, pretty impressive. But you'd like to see more of a forward momentum on that. The other thing is he is prone to having balls batted and intercepted. We saw that in this game against Arizona State. It's been scouted on him. He's got a lower release point because he has kind of it's not a full sidearm delivery. It's more of a kind of a 3/4. I try and people have asked me to compare it to anybody. I think the best comparison I can make is Phillip Rivers. If you remember Phillip Rivers from the San Diego Chargers of all those years, he had kind of that 3/4 release, and that's more of what Jake Retzlaff has with his release, and it gets batted at times, and had an interception on that. And so once again, he was good in this game, but not great. I hope there's a delineation there, because if you look at the PFF grades, he was BYU's highest rated player in this game, crazily enough. I know that may sound absurd to you, but that's what PFF says right now. I think it was a 78.3 is what I saw on his PFF grade. So a solid grade all the same, the interceptions notwithstanding. Other guys I felt like stood out in this game. Isaiah Glasker, folks, you're looking at the next, I think, big NFL linebacker coming out of BYU, and Isaiah Glasker, all of 6'5", all of 230, 240 pounds, and runs like an absolute deer. He had 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, both of which were absolutely critical plays. We are seeing, once again, the rise of, I think, a great player who's going to be making noise on Sunday in the relatively near future, I feel like. Glasker came to BYU as a skinny, tall, lanky wide receiver / defensive back prospect, and has morphed his body into this bruising, like I said, 6'5", 230, 240-pound linebacker. And I can't shout him out enough. He led BYU in overall tackles with 12 on the day. Props to him on that. I really was impressed with what he did in this game. I also got to give a shout out to guys like Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter. Yeah, they had moments where they didn't necessarily get the job done because, as you mentioned, a guy like Chase Roberts ends up coming up a couple yards short. But they put their heart and soul on the line. Darius Lassiter playing close to his hometown, stated hometown of Chandler, Arizona. He had 5 receptions for 103 yards. And that final interception that all but sealed BYU's fate, had Jake Retzlaff put that on the money there, there's a chance he may have housed that, because there was a seam right up the gut there that Darius Lassiter might be able to score that. And it just was an overthrow by Jake. And once again, it goes back to the thing. I think Jake's a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. And can he make that leap? I think I would lean towards no at this point in his career. Other things I took away from this game, I'm looking at it, and Cam Scadaboo, 147 yards. It's not great, but the thing is, BYU in the second half bottled him up. He had a 96 of those in the first half, and all 3 of his touchdowns came in that first half. So BYU adjusted, but where was the defense in the first half? That's the tough part to stomach for the BYU Cougars, is had the defense been able to do anything really better in that first half, may have been a different outcome in this game. And I think there's blame to be shared across the board here. I think the play calling at times was suspect by Aaron Roderick, Jay Hill as the coordinators. I thought execution was lacking at times. There's baffling personnel decisions still in terms of late substitution penalties. And like I said, the blame goes all around to players, coaches, and they'll all say that. It's not just one person who wins or loses a football game, but there's some tough lessons to be learned in this. BYU ends up with 391 total yards. Currently, once again, I think you should petition and have the official statisticians of the NCAA or the Big 12 look at that final Hail Mary, and I think you should add that yardage on, even though it's kind of putting lipstick on a pig. But you look at it, and there are positives to take out of this game. The fact that BYU fought back when it felt like that 21-3 lead might have been insurmountable for the Cougars. They fought back. They limited Arizona State to just 7 points in the second half. They made adjustments at halftime, but you got to come out faster. You got to start faster. That's the lesson to be learned here for BYU, is you cannot afford to continue to spot teams' leads and think, you know what, we're good. We're going to come back in this game. Why can't you play on the front foot from the get-go? That's the question that remains to be answered, it feels like, for this BYU team. And now they got pressure on them because, once again, it's a must-win scenario next week against Houston. Do the Houston Cougars, they come in playing loose? I would expect so, because they know they can play spoiler maker. And it's a tough spot to be in if you're BYU. Once again, the pressure is all on you in this circumstance. So hopefully, I'm projecting a week ahead that BYU can play more clean football and keep their hopes of playing in Arlington alive, because you don't want to go out with a whimper. I said it earlier this week on this podcast, if you're an everydayer, I said that losing this game, you'd potentially be the most disappointing 9-2 team in the country. And I think that still kind of holds true here. I think BYU can still hold their heads high, though, because they battled back in this game and came, as we mentioned, oh so close to notching an all-time comeback. But close doesn't count in college football. It's what the whole adage. Close is only good in horseshoes and hand grenades. That's really what it's good for. So tough L for BYU to absorb. And yes, Dallin Levitt had his say. If you saw that on Instagram, I put it out on social media as well. He was very pointed in who he was criticizing with BYU. And you know what? So be it. He and his brother, they won the game. So to the victors go the spoils, and they get to talk their trash. So Sam Levitt, by the way, 16 of 25, 247 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Shout out to our good friend, a good friend of the podcast, in Tanner Wall, for intercepting that pass. It was deflected, I believe, by John Nelson's face mask. But sad part is that interception, I feel like a moment BYU made able to capture some momentum in that first half, and they did nothing with it. Just kind of the epitome of that first half for BYU. You feel like you got a big play that could turn the tide a little bit, and you squandered it. So got to start faster. Absolutely got to start faster if you're BYU. I guess that's the lesson to be taken from this. Is you can't play just one half of football and expect it to be enough in this circumstance. All right, we will finish up today's show with actually some basketball talk. The Cougars, speaking of BYU men's basketball, were on the court shortly after this BYU football game went final, taking on Mississippi Valley State. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 on this postcast, and we'll talk about BYU basketball and some of the lessons to be drawn from their win over Mississippi Valley State. Oh, I should mention before we get to that, I apologize. I just looked at my notes and I just saw this. One other shout out I wanted to give is I know that special teams struggled in that first half, having a moment where a ball deflects off Dallin Hall and he's unable to corral that football. But I felt like BYU special teams, that play besides it, I think very solid. Will Ferrin remains, I think, absolutely elite. So I know amidst all the talk and the chatter about the L and everything else going on, Will Ferrin, I think, is putting together quietly, maybe not so quietly, one of the best kicking seasons in BYU football history. It's pretty incredible to watch what he's doing. And that 49-yard field goal at the end of that first half, that was a pressure moment, and he aced it. So once again, it may be, like I said, putting a little too much positivity out there for you in Cougar Nation, but I really think Will Ferrin deserves a shout out because I thought he was very, very solid in his role for BYU special teams. All right, so I just wanted to fit that in there. All right, so coming up next, we're talking BYU hoops. What did we learn from BYU and Mississippi Valley State? We'll dig into that next right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Now, Game Time is here for you guys. Get you out to the events you want to go to, whether it's sporting events, comedy, theater, music. You can get out to all of them with our friends at Game Time, and the Game Time Picks feature in their app makes it really simple. They filter through the thousands of different tickets that might be available for an event, find the best seats for you at the best price, and the best part is you also can toggle what they call their all-in pricing feature right up front in the app. You toggle it, it shows you exactly what you're paying with all the fees included. You're not getting to the checkout page, and all of a sudden an avalanche of fees are tacked on, seemingly doubling or tripling the price of the tickets to the event you're going to. That won't happen if you toggle that inside our good friends, the Game Time app. Also, once again, the Game Time app has job loss protection, event cancellation protection. Heck, if you find better ticket prices, they'll credit you 110% of the difference back to your account. So you download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get $20 off your purchase. Once again, download Game Time today, use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege, save yourself $20, and get started with our friends over at Game Time. As they like to say, what time is it? It's game time. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. Jake Hatch with you here. All right, let's talk BYU basketball before we go here. BYU improves to 5-0, 87-43 over the Mississippi Valley State Delta Devils at the Marriott Center on Saturday night. So not all BYU teams lost. And oh, by the way, I should also say, big shout out to the BYU men's and women's cross country teams, double national champions. That is impressive stuff. Ed Eyestone, Diljit Taylor, y'all deserve to pat yourself on the back, take a deep bow, because y'all brought home the hardware. BYU, I guess we should say it, is a cross-country school. So congratulations to the cross-country teams. Monumental effort for them to win that. And really, really cool. Ed Eyestone, once again, Diljit Taylor, they deserve a ton of the credit, but also their athletes showing up on the biggest stage in cross-country in the national championships and bringing home a double national championship to Provo, Utah. All right. Now back to basketball for a moment. BYU wins this game 87-43, and it really wasn't even that close. BYU had this one from the get-go. This was a scheduled win. Mississippi Valley State spends most of their non-conference slate just barnstorming across the country, and they collect a bunch of checks, and they routinely get beat. They are 1-4, I think, on the season, speaking of the Delta Devils. But in this game, things that we learned about BYU basketball. Well, it's good to have Dallin Hall back. Now, I mentioned this to our Locked On Cougars Insider group, I believe. So, by the way, another plug, if you haven't joined the Locked On Cougars Insider group, you would have known a few weeks back that Dallin Hall was dealing with a toe issue that has been the reason why he's been sitting out so far. It was good to see him back in the lineup starting for BYU in this game, and I think it comes at a perfect time. He got some game time on the court as BYU gets ready now to head to San Diego to face off against Ole Miss on Thursday on Thanksgiving. It's good to see him on the court, and I thought he was actually very, very solid. 10 points, 3 of 7 shooting. All of those, by the way, all 3 of his made shots and attempts coming from beyond the arc. 3 of 7 from beyond the arc. He adds 5 assists, 4 rebounds. Really, really impressive stuff from Dallin Hall in his first action of the season. Good to see him out there. He did play just 21 minutes, but he'll take that at this point. Jaeger Demon, actually a more muted performance for him. 8 points, 3 of 4 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. That's kind of a downturn in terms of the numbers for him through the first 5 games of the year. But guys who really, I thought, stood out for BYU, Foussenyi Traore. Now, Keba Keita was unavailable in this game. What I'm hearing is that it's not considered to be especially a serious injury. This is a sit out this game, and hopefully he's back for Ole Miss, but it's TBD on the lead up to that game against Ole Miss before he's back on the court. But the nice part is Foussenyi Traore continues to just get it done. 15 points to lead BYU in scoring on the night, 5 of 8 overall. He actually did attempt a 3 in this game that made me chuckle a little bit. He was 5 of 6 from the free throw line, but also adds a double-double with 11 rebounds. Foose, I don't necessarily think that he was all that keen on starting his senior season on the bench, but he's embraced the role he's taken on, and now he's been given an extended opportunity over the past 2 games. BYU has been the beneficiary of him going beast mode. So congratulations to Foose. Good to see him have another big performance for BYU. Also really liked what I saw from Dawson Baker, 5 of 7 from the field, ends up with 10 points in this one. Dawson is a guy that I think he can continue to get better and better as the season goes along. And I think his ability to come off the bench and be that scoring punch is a nice addition for the Cougars. And then also Trevin Nell. 12 points off the bench. You'll always take that from a guy like that. 2 of 4 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. Also, BYU's free throw shooting overall as a team, much better tonight, 73.7%. Yeah, you'd like to see it north of 80%, but you'll take that. And then one other thing I should mention is that I forgot to mention Kanon Catchings. He showed, and speaking of Kanon, I felt like more offensive moves than I've seen this season so far. Some dribble, like you're talking like stepping into shots off of the dribble. It's not just catch and shoot stuff from Kanon Catchings right now. And that's what I saw in this game from him is he's able to shake guys, had some really, really nice takes to the rim. What did he end up? He ended up 2 of 3 from the free throw line. So you'll take that from him. 3 rebounds, 3 assists. So I think Kanon Catchings realizes that he can't just be a pure catch and shoot guy for BYU. If he wants to be a one and doneer, he's got to be able to show more of that to the NBA. The latest NBA mock drafts that I saw did not have him in the first round. At least the ones that I frequent did not have him there as he was in the preseason. Jaeger Demon is now like running 2 or 3, feels like behind Cooper Flagg in a lot of the mock drafts. But I think a guy like Kanon Catchings showed more tonight of what a well-rounded player he is. Like I said, 14 points, 5 of 10 from the field, just 2 of 6 from 3. So not his best shooting performance from beyond the arc, but I thought he showed more overall in his skill set than just pure shooting, which has kind of been the hallmark of his run with BYU. So just overall, a solid win for the BYU basketball program. And now they head on the road. Now it's a neutral site affair. They head to the Rady Children's Invitational mid-season tournament event down there in San Diego this coming weekend. It's a big opportunity for 2 big wins if BYU can manage it down there in San Diego. Obviously, it starts off against Ole Miss on Thanksgiving, and then it's obviously depends on the results of how things go for BYU, but this is the first real test upcoming for BYU basketball. And that's where I'm looking forward to seeing what guys like Jaeger Demon, or I mentioned Kanon Catchings. I want to see what they're capable of doing against better opposition here, because BYU has been feasting on lesser opposition so far. I know UC Riverside pushed them. I get that, but let's be honest. UC Riverside, they're not same caliber as an Ole Miss, and also you could face off against either Purdue or NC State. Those are 2 other teams on the other side of that bracket in that Rady tournament. Rady Children's Invitational Tournament at Lion Tree Arena in San Diego, California. If you're in the Southern California area in San Diego for Thanksgiving weekend, hey, you may stop by and support the Cougars. It'll be a 3:30 tip on Thanksgiving Day, and then either 1:30 or 4 o'clock on Friday. So afternoon affairs, if you're going to be doing things with the family on the holiday or on Black Friday. But there's a big 3-game stretch upcoming here for BYU. Once again, Thursday, Ole Miss, either Purdue or NC State after that. And then you have to travel across the country. The furthest travel BYU will make all season long, I believe, is to Providence out in Rhode Island as part of the Big 12 Big East battle. It's a showcase event they have put on for years between these 2 conferences, who are considered to be probably the 2 most preeminent basketball conferences in the country. But these 3 games, I think, are going to tell us a lot about BYU and what to expect when they go into the Big 12 season coming up at the end of December. Because these 3 teams, they're the caliber of a lot of teams in the Big 12. Now, I would say the Ole Miss and Providence are probably bottom tier Big 12 teams at this juncture, but there's no reason to think they can't more than test BYU and show the Cougars, hey, this is what the level of football you got to be able to live up to and compete with. Because if you can't, well, that's a problem. So a lot riding on the line for BYU here. So kind of positive with the good out there with BYU basketball getting the W, BYU football fighting back in the second half, but coming up short. I think you can take some pride in the fact that they fought back, but at the same time, you want to see BYU football get a little quicker start. That's the one part about this, is the disappointing factor as you look at it and say, what could have happened had you done a little bit more in that first half? But there you go. So just kind of a rambling postcast, my thoughts, kind of getting them out on the paper. It's on video or audio, more like it appropriately, but that's what I got for you guys. So thank you for all your interaction. Apologies, I didn't get a chance to kind of split these 2 postcasts up, but family duties dictated I sit down and knock it out all at once. And as always, cannot thank you guys enough for the interaction on social media, in the Locked On Cougars Insider group, and just overall, all of your patronage and your support of the podcast. It means the world to us, and it means that we get to keep doing our job here. That's the best part about this. So thank you as always for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And as always, thank you for being everydayers right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.